Most everyone has heard of the famous work by Edward Gibbon entitled The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Gibbon was an 18th century historian and member of British Parliament. In his writings, he speaks of first century believers, stating that Christianity offered itself to the world, armed with the strength of the Mosaic Law and delivered from the weight of its fetters. He goes on to say that the enfranchisement of the church from the bonds of the synagogue was a work, however, of some time and some difficulty, and that those he called Judaizing Christians seem to have argued with some degree of plausibility from the divine origin of the Mosaic Law. He questions why Messiah himself and his disciples authorized the Mosaic Law rather than abolishing it, and tells us that early Christians believed that if the being who was the same throughout all eternity had intended to abolish those sacred rites, which had served to distinguish his chosen people, the repeal of them would have been no less clear. Edward Gibbon concludes by stating that arguments like these appear to have been used in the defense of the expiring cause of the Mosaic Law. But the industry of our learned divines has abundantly explained the ambiguous language of the Old Testament and the ambiguous conduct of the apostolic teachers. Just as King Solomon once wrote, "There's nothing new under the sun." Today, the industry of our learned divines still attempts to provide some explanation as to why first century believers that walked and talked with Jesus thought that they were supposed to keep God's commandments, and how we do not have to. Now that's hard to explain. Gibbon tells us that those whom he calls Judaizing Christians reasonably argue that the Mosaic Law originated with God and that Jesus and his disciples authorized its observance by their example. In other words, Jesus and the disciples kept the commandments and never taught anyone to break them. They believe that if Jesus had intended for the law to be abrogated by the new covenant, he would have plainly said so. And as we know, he said the exact opposite. He said that even the slightest aspect of the law would never pass away. Jesus never taught anyone to break the laws of God. He kept them. The believers of the first century kept them, and millions of believers around the world keep them today. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. Earnestly contending for the faith once delivered to the saints, I'm Richard Reeves with Just the Facts.